to Canberra, where Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce is speaking alongside Assistant Rural Health Minister Dr David Gillespie. They're talking about the sugar tax. Let's have a listen.
What the Grattan Institute is suggesting that we come up with this arbitrary tax, and it's a tax where apparently if you put sugar in your coffee shop, in your latte, that's not a problem. But if you buy a can of drink, that is a problem. Now, you've got to nip these things in the bud right from the word go, because Mexico had one of these taxes. What happened there, they lost the jobs and the sugar consumption kept going up. Our sugar consumption in Australia is actually reducing. We believe in being healthy, but we don't believe that you have a health policy that is led by a tax on sugar. Because if you want to deal with being overweight, well, here's a rough suggestion: stop eating so much and do a bit of exercise. There's two bits of handy advice, and you can get that for free. This is one of these suggestions right at the start we always thought was just bonkers mad, but now it's getting more and more sort of momentum. So we've got to come out straight away and say we are not going to be supporting a sugar tax. The National Party will not be supporting a sugar tax, and I want to make sure that we give everybody the opportunity to in an agricultural industry to produce their product, whether it's beef, whether it's sheep, whether it's wool, whether it's grain, whether it's chickpeas, whether it's chia beans or whatever they are, and to do it without the government saying, oh, we now have a sort of a moral assessment of the food you're producing, and we're going to tax some and not tax others. If we start down this slippery slope, it will just end in a lot of incredibly angry farmers who are already paying tax and higher electricity prices by reason of other government policies, which I support. But if they say, mate, if you're going to tax me for the electricity to irrigate, and then you're going to tax me on the product I produce, then I'm going to start thinking that you're a government that's not listening. And now that is not going to be the case with us. We hear this report from the Grattan Institute. It's slightly less ridiculous and slightly more ridiculous than the one they put out the week before, where they wanted to tax old people more. And we do not support a sugar tax. And now on to health issues. I will go to Dr David Gillespie.
Yeah, thanks, Barnaby. Yeah, I'm David Gillespie. I'm the Assistant Minister for Rural Health and have practiced in medicine before Parliament for 33 years. Now, as the Minister responsible for supervising food standards, I would like to say it's not government policy to have a sugar tax, but we are doing, and we fully acknowledge that Australia has an obesity problem. We are doing so much in this space already. Many of you haven't heard of it, but there is a Healthy Food Partnership, which is a collaboration between the food industry, public health and government, which is driving changes in food formulation, accentuating changes to formulation and portion control, and fast food restaurants, food processors, all people in the food industry have a say in it. We've developed the Health Star rating system, which is a front-of-pack labelling system that helps Australians make more nutritious choices. And that Health Star rating process is in its infancy. It's only been going for 2 years, but it's got very broad industry buy-in. There's 115 food companies that have signed up to it. There's 5,500 and climbing products on the shelves now that have put themselves through the Health Star rating process, and that's only in 2 years, and that's out of 12,000 goods on the shelf. So almost 50% in 2 years, which is amazing. A lot of other countries are looking at the success of this program, and it is driving healthy and nutritious choices. Now, as the Deputy Prime Minister pointed out, I've got that same simple advice. When I practiced, because I was a gastroenterologist, which is part of the food processing industry in many ways, I saw a lot of overweight people with effects on their general health, diabetes, liver disease, you name it, their joints. But the take-home message I would give to them is to go on that well-known ELF diet, and they'd say, what's the ELF diet? And I bet you don't know, but it's the Eat Less Food diet. And I would also at the same time put them on the DME program, and they'd say, Doc, what's the DME program? And I'd say, well, do more exercise. So it's pretty simple. You are what you eat, but you're also a result of how often you eat and how much you eat. So you've got to make wise choices, and that's what the Health Star rating is trying to do. The Australian government also has healthy weight guidelines, websites, $100 million into sporting schools funds to get our school children moving. But obesity is a problem. I fully acknowledge that. We're doing a lot to fix it, but it's a whole of society approach. We've got to get everyone moving more, sitting less. It's a lifestyle, it's a convenience and a food excess problem that the Western world has. And by cherry picking one source of calories over all the others, it just doesn't make sense. And as the Deputy Prime Minister pointed out, and as the Grattan Institute report itself has pointed out, it is way too early to say if this will ever, what is proposed in and has been delivered in other countries, will actually reduce obesity. It might make people feel good because they have this concept that, you know, obesity is due to one single food source. I'm saying that's nonsense. There's no evidence to say that it will work. It's a hypothetical construct that they're saying. You know, we're not food fascists. We let people choose what they eat, but we're trying to make them make better, wiser, more nutritious choices.
Mr. Joyce, the government recently increased the excise on tobacco because that's harmful.
Yeah.
If sugar's also harmful, why not increase the tax on that?
Well, I don't know, but I can't remember the last time I decided to eat a cigarette. But it's obviously one cigarette can cause you problems. There's no one suggesting that any cigarettes are good for you. I mean, and I'm not a saint. I'll have a bunger every now and then myself, but that's a completely different argument because cigarettes will kill you. One cigarette's no good for you. Half a cigarette's no good for you. Cigarettes are no good for you, but no one's suggesting that if you have a can of soft drink once a week, that it's going to really affect your health. If you want to live on mothers or whatever they call them and super saturated sugar drinks, well, it's not the tax that's going to save you. It's common sense. Just nil by mouth. Just cut down what you eat.
So how about an agreement, national agreement like in the UK to actually reduce the proportion of sugar in sugary drinks? It's not going to make a huge difference to the taste of the things, and it'll actually have a benefit.
Well, I believe in the freedom of the individual, and if that's a discussion that certain companies want to have, they can have that. But that's something completely different to a tax. What we say with the tax is we, the government, are going to moralise about what you take out of the fridge, and that's a crazy spot to be in.
Can I make a comment on that? Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment on that. That's exactly what the Healthy Food Partnership is doing. It's a voluntary group, a collaborative, industry members, regulators, nutritionists, governments, all driving reformulatory changes, so the formulation of foods is more healthy and nutritious, reductions in the things that you don't need to get a nutritious diet, like saturated fats, total carbohydrates, salt, all those things which if you have too much of them, it's not good for you. But it's a voluntary buying system, and as I said, it's in its infancy, the Health Star rating. 5,500 goods on the shelf out of 12,000 just in 2 years, and it will continue to grow and drive changes in reformulation, portion size and all those other things that are part of the mix of why people are obese.
Is drinking a can of Coke a day healthy for you?
Well, put it this way, if you're running marathons, it's probably not going to hurt you, but if you're sitting in your chair every day, it's probably better to mix your calorie sources. It's a treat food, it's a convenience food. I'm not going to say whether it's bad for you, but if you had something like that 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, no, it wouldn't be, but most people don't do that.
Mr. Joyce, you said that sugar consumption is going down in Australia. Where do you get that information?
Because we've had discussions with the sugar industry where they actually,
Bodies that measure this stuff,
Pardon?
like the ABS or health institutes.
Well, that was the research that was delivered to me. Okay, now, you know, beg pardon? Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
If sugar use is going down, why are we getting so fat?
Because, well, there's a couple of reasons. I think because people are sitting on their backside too much. They're eating too much food, and if it's, you know, it's not soft drinks, if they're eating too many chips or eating other food, well, of course, it's unsurprising, and everybody's standing around right here now looking at everybody else's stomach. Well, mate, so the issue is take the responsibility upon yourself. The Australian Taxation Office is not going to save your health, right? Do not go to the ATO as opposed to go to your doctor, or put on a pair of sand shoes and walk around the block, and if you really can, go for a run. Now, the ATO is not a better solution than jumping in the pool and going for a swim. The ATO is not a better solution than reducing your portion size. So, get yourself a robust chair and a heavy table, and halfway through the meal, put both hands on the table and just push back. That will help you lose weight.
Mr Joyce, if I could just ask you about the Murray-Darling Basin.
Sure.
Ian Hunter said yesterday that in last Thursday's meeting, you said that you'd go hell for leather on the bits that Victoria and New South Wales like and wouldn't agree to anything South Australia wants. That's different language to the letter that we've all seen.
No, but I didn't. Well, no, I didn't. I honest to God, I don't think I said that. So that's with this thing, just because I know there'll be a heap of questions. When Tony Burke comes out and says we're throwing out the plan, no, we're not, Tony. We're talking about the plan you wrote. And in section 17(2), part B, we have a problem because it says that we can't get more water back if it creates, in the 450, if it creates socio or economic detriment. In fact, it has to be neutral or improve the situation, which is a bit like saying, you can have 3 apples, but and you can eat them, but you can't put your teeth in them. And it's now, what I'm saying to everybody is, let's go out and tell me the solutions. Let's bring in this wealth of knowledge, and let's find a solution. But that is the act that I was given, and it is just in my nature, and maybe it's an incredible fault. If I see a problem and I walk around and everyone's telling me about this problem, then isn't it my responsibility to say, okay, let's all sit down and have a discussion about it? And I went to South Australia, to Adelaide, not avoiding it, actually brought on the discussion myself and said, okay, let's have a yarn about this. I'm happy for Mr. Hunter to come up here and have another yarn, okay? I've got broad shoulders, we can all move on and get moving with this thing. But, you've got to stay in the room, mate. You can't just go halfway, 10 minutes into the meeting and toss the teddy out of the pram and then run down the street. That doesn't work.
The Murray-Darling Basin Authority will be doing its socio-economic
Yep.
review of the Southern Basin
Yep,
next year.
yep.
Is it wise that all parties perhaps wait till all of the research is in before we rule anything out?
Look, why not start with the reality of what we've got right now? Because everyone's bringing it up. That's why everywhere I go in the Southern Basin, from South Australia all the way through, discussing this. So I say, okay, well, we should have the discussion. That's what politics is there for. To have the discussion. Let's get this thing out and deal with it.
One Nation seems to dig itself in on the background tax and with Jeffrey Landers' plan of 2.5%. Is that making it increasingly difficult?
Yeah. Look. This is complete political bastardry by the Labor Party, who knows better. I mean, Mr. Bone and Mr. Shorten know better than this. But what they've done, if they're going to have as their senior economic advisor, Senator Jackie Lambie, then we are in for a very scary time in this nation. That is not where common sense resides. And the problem with that, of course, is we've had a negotiated settlement. You've got to go through the chronology of this, and I'll be very brief. Wayne Swan put the tax rate up to 28%, and then by increment it ended up at 32.5%. People from overseas were claiming the tax-free threshold, which they weren't entitled to. And the Administrative Appeals Tribunal in November last year said you can't do that, and therefore the rate went up to 32.5%. There is no piece of legislation that we've ever passed that said backpackers should be paying 32.5%. It doesn't exist. But we do have to pass legislation to bring the rate down. We do have to pass legislation to bring the rate down. So we talk to the NFF, the VFF, the people up in the territory, the tourism accommodation industry. We get everybody in, and we've got to get through Treasury as well, and we come up with a rate 19%. Why? Because that means that we are competitive in net take-home pay for backpackers coming to Australia. In fact, they're better off coming to Australia than if they went to New Zealand, Canada, or England. They're our competition. Everybody's happy. All moves on. Problem solved. Except at the last minute, Senator Jackie Lambie says, no, I've got another idea, it's 10.5%. And we say, well, mate, that means that someone in the field is going to be paying twice, the Australian is going to be paying twice the tax that the person from overseas is paying. And then Bill Shorten says, that's a great idea. And then we say, Bill, aren't you the fellow walking around talking about protecting Australian jobs? I mean, how does this work? I mean, I hate to say it, but you sound a little bit hypocritical. How do you get this, how do you say I'm protecting Australian jobs, but I'm going to make a distinct advantage to employ people from overseas on the same day? And so what we want is for Bill Shorten to be decent and say, OK, we'll let the 19% through. And if he has this epiphany that he wants a 10.5% rate, sure, Bill, take it to the next election. Say that that's going to be one of your number one policies. You're going to have a 10.5% backpacker tax rate for the next election. OK, and that's your right. But let's deal with this issue so we don't put at risk the whole agricultural industry. Because in the whole agricultural industry, in the permanent plantings, where we need backpackers, So I think that's what Australians expect. And in the past, where they always used to, the Labor Party say, oh, you're so negative when they were in government. OK, they might have had a right at times to say that. But why would they go out and do exactly the same thing? Because the only people they're hurting here is rural Australia.
We're going to leave Barnaby Joyce, Deputy